all down at the White House. No banker was left
This afternoon in front of the Wells Fargo headquarters in the City District, the demonstrators want the state attorney and the U.S. Justice Department to charges against top-level executives ran the bank when lower-level employees some 2 million fake accounts.
They ordered them to open fake accounts, them to do things that were illegal, and they should. If you or I, if the people to do something illegal, that's a crime in itself.
The bank is already being investigated by both the department and the state attorney general's office, but no one has been charged. In the meantime, the bank's primary objective now is to try for trust in Wells Fargo. To release a statement saying, in part, quote, committed to take the decisive action to learn the necessary lessons to customers are never susceptible to the behaviors and failures that got we are today.
No banker, no banker, no banker could I find. They were all down at the station. No banker left.
I wanted to say that there is an epidemic going on in the country of bullying workers. Okay? An epidemic is going on. An epidemic of thievery is going on. And if anybody tries to speak up, oh, they want to try to target those people, try to fire them, try to discipline them, whatever. On my job, I'm a steward. They wanted to get rid of me so I wouldn't be able to stand up for the rights of the workers. There's an epidemic of bullying going on, an epidemic of thievery going on in the country. When is the American public going to say, we've had enough of this? We've had enough of bullying. We've had enough of thievery. When are we going to say we have enough? Do we all have to get ripped off? Do we all have to be in the foreclosure court for it to be a realization of, hey, we got to make a change? What's it going to take? Millions of people already lost their homes. People already lost the family farms. The banks foreclosed on their family farms. I just find it interesting. Now, they go and fire workers when some big crooks at the top get to profit $130 million. And they was the ones who started the process of bullying workers so they could open up illegal accounts. You mean those workers have to lose their jobs? Or why? Or what? The people at the top didn't lose their jobs. They get to walk off with $130 million. Okay? There ain't no bank safe. Your money ain't safe in any of these banks. Wells Fargo today be your bank tomorrow. This is a catchy, bullying, robbing system. Now, wait a minute. What are you going to do when your bank rips you off? What are you going to do? Ask yourself that question. It's only a matter of time this system keeps rolling like this.
Get out of that bank.
Okay? What are you going to do? No, your money ain't safe in these banks no more. These banksters running banks. Who ever heard of 53,000 workers lose their jobs because they were bullied to open up illegal accounts? And they're the ones that's fired when the people at the top get to pocket $130 million? Come on, America. What's wrong with you? Your money ain't safe in these banks with a system like this. Your house ain't safe with a system like this. Hey, you and your family, how far y'all gonna have to get in debt to educate just one person? The banksters will have all these old loans just pimping the young. And then what? Foreclosing on the older, poorer workers? Hey, America, wake up. Time to take some action. Stop the job bullying. Stop trying to attack the stores. Stop trying to rip off the consumer. Hey, I think we need more public banks. We can get some postal banks.
Postal banks.
We used to have postal banks a long time ago. Till the banksters wanted to shut the postal banks down. Look what happened. Look what happened. Okay? America, it's time for a change.
Wells Fargo, they got greedy. They just can't get enough. They run the regulators, that's why they don't get tough. Well, the people have the right to rise up and end the fid. The right to set up public banks and not to be misled. No banker, no banker, no banker could I find. They were all down at the jailhouse. No banker will be left behind.
This is a press release put out by the United Public Workers for Action, and I'd like to read from the text. We know that Wells Fargo carried out consumer fraud affecting over 2 million depositors And we know that the regulators only slapped Wells Fargo on the wrists with fines that were very minimal. We also know that John Stumpf and Carrie Tolstead have walked away with over $250 million in retirement packages, even though they were the perpetrators of the fraud. Also, over 5,000 workers were fired, even though they were forced to abide by the dictates of Stumpf and Tolstead. However, what is the context of this episode and what must be done? The Wells Fargo episode is integral to the specific stage of capitalism that we are living in for the past 40 years. John Bellamy Foster has called that stage monopoly financialization, whereby the big banks are driving capital accumulation.
Is Wells Fargo really doing this shit?
Whereby the big banks are driving capital accumulation for the 1% at the expense of the 99%, and may I say, most of the nations of the world also. This situation has been politically promoted since the 1970s by bipartisan consensus support from both Democrats and the Republicans. The Great Depression was largely caused by the fact that Wall Street was not regulated, allowing massive speculation during the Roaring '20s. After the Roosevelt administration passed the 1932 Glass-Steagall Act and the Securities Act of 1933, Wall Street was held in check into the 1970s. However, beginning in the late 1970s, the Carter administration initiated steps to deregulate Wall Street. Since each administration, regardless of whichever party was in power, has been in complicity with Wall Street. The most egregious administration was Bill Clinton's. This is because in 1999 he signed the Orwellian-sounding Financial Services Modernization Act, which repealed Glass-Steagall, therefore completely deregulating the commercial and securities banks. This allowed the banks to pursue hyper-speculation, directly leading to the ongoing exponential income and wealth inequalities, as well as the 2000 dot-com crash and the financial crash in 2008. Nevertheless, rather than putting firm reins on the banks, after the 2008 crash, the Bush-Obama administration bailed out Wall Street to the tune of $5.7 trillion, while also carrying out massive tax cuts and severe austerity policies which has devolved much of the country into third world status. In response to obvious anger among the populace, Congress did pass the Dodd-Frank bill, allegedly aimed at re-regulating the banks, as well as creating the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. What has been the result? Dodd-Frank has proven to be as weak as many critics stated prior to its passage. Moreover, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has very little bite either. Moreover, the Federal Reserve has, through its policy of quantitative easing, has poured trillions into the coffers of the banks, claiming the intent of creating liquidity. Nor has any Wall Street executive been convicted and sent to prison. Not worried about government constraints, Wall Street has gone wild in ripping off the public. This episode, brought to you by Wells Fargo, is only a drop in the bucket to what has happened since. In addition, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau has probably exposed Wells Fargo as an election year ploy to further seduce Democratic voters, showing that the system is working to protect the public. All of this has led now to a gigantic new bubble which will burst sooner rather than later, causing a crash that may make 2008 look like a bump in the road. What must be done? We know that the ruling class, its managers and politicians will not implement policies to seriously reel in the banks, nor will either presidential candidate do anything to reverse austerity and massive tax cuts for the rich. Just the opposite. Believe it or not, there was a political party in the United States that had a solution that could possibly work today. In 1892, the recently formed Populist Party called for a nationalization of the banks as well as the railroads and public utilities, thus making them into public utilities. This would have made the banks accountable to their depositors while serving the needs of workers and local communities rather than the super rich. The populist forces were living in a period when the economy was being transformed from competitive capitalism to industrial-based monopoly capitalism controlled by corporations and banks. During that process, farmers, workers, and small business interests were being swallowed up by Wall Street and the railroads. In fact, this is what the preamble of the Populist Party's 1892 Omaha platform stated about that. Quote, "We meet in the midst of a nation brought to the verge of moral, political, and material ruin. The fruits of toil of millions are boldly stolen to build up colossal fortunes for a few, unprecedented in the history of mankind, and the possessors of these in turn despise the Republic and endanger liberty." Does that sound familiar? By 1896, the Populist Party had dissolved into the Democratic Party, and much of its platform was co-opted into the two-party system, becoming known as the Progressive Era. Today, unlike the late 19th century, early 20th century, there will be no reform because it is not in the interests of the ruling class. The ruling class is no longer committed to a national development model. In fact, the objective conditions today demand a global transformation, not just national reform like Trump proposes. The United States economy is just too integrated into the world capitalist system. Finally, what we must keep in mind, we're living during a historical political opening where radical change is possible. But what is necessary is the mobilization of united workers armed with a politically coherent strategy and international orientation and a vision for the future. If that can happen when the financial architecture crashes next time, radical change could happen.
Banks get bailed out. We got sold out.
Hello, I'm Alice Lindstrom, and I am a member of the American Postal Workers Union and a retired postal women clerk. And when I was a child, I had a postal banking account. And then the banks found that postal banking cut into their possible profits. So they put the pressure on in the United States, as they were doing in other countries, to eliminate postal banking. And they did. But the banks are not covering banking in the small towns and have not for some time. Please, I'm worried about you getting hit by a car. Please don't do that. And so so now there's a coalition, the Postal Workers Union, and believe it or not, Republicans from small communities who have been deserted by their banks. It's a strange coalition, but it's a realistic move to get postal banking restored. And I see it as a very important thing, and now is the time. And pressure can be put on individual Congress people of all parties and the administration, because we can get postal banking. And postal banking can take over in the cities once it gets, it can all happen at once, but it's crying, it's very obvious in the small towns where it is so necessary. And as far as things in the post office, conditions are getting an acute point now, because there is all this mail for the election and all these different things, and the carriers are being overworked. They're working late at night. It used to be that carriers weren't supposed to work late at night. They can't keep people working because they get overtired and they have a compulsory overtime. So if they don't meet goals, it used to be goals, now it's compulsory expectations. They get suspended and fired, and that's why your mail is often late now. And now is the time. We have to have this change. I believe that the Republican Party is going to disintegrate into at least 3 different pieces. And this is the time for different parties to come in so that we can have a true multi-party system. I am a Green, and what was said about the Greens is not true here earlier. We can vote for what, there are other parties that are out there, Peace and Freedom, people with whom we can make common cause on many different kinds of things. And I think that that is the realistic way that it's going to be. And any party that can get 5% of the vote is going to get federal money. So looking ahead to the next election, we realistically could have somebody from other than these 2 parties that have dominated our system for so long. So we need to take the long view on this and support each other wherever we can.
The bankers now.
Says, what is the robbing of a bank to the founding of a bank? And that's the case with Wells Fargo and literally every other bank in the country. It's legalized theft, not just Bank of America, but the entire banking system in this country. Let me give you an example. President Obama, the #1 bailout artist in the history of the United States, bailed out the failing, crisis-ridden banking and corporate system to the tune of not the $180 billion, $1 million that Wells Fargo ripped off, but the bailouts to American corporations as a result of this economic crisis totaled $32 trillion with a T, the largest bailout in the world, virtually double the GDP of the entire country. They printed money and they cut back social services in order to pay off the banks. It was not the government that controls the banks of the United States, but the banks and corporations which control the government of the United States.
Slavery, we need to end this system where the banks and the corporations run the society, and primarily the 100% of big, rich CEOs who control these corporations and banks dictate how we run, how this society is run. They use all kinds of wiles of trying to separate us by race or sex or profession or job. Because they're in such a small minority, they got to do this to continually separate us. But we can join together, and it's going to take a party, a political party. There's no getting around that idea. We need a political organization that can direct the anger that people like Trump are exploiting. He doesn't want to direct that anger. He just wants to utilize that anger to divide. We need to organize to direct the anger that is welled up in this society against the ruling class of this society. And only a Revolutionary Workers' Party can do that, because they have, it's not a moral question, it's a pragmatic question. The workers have the power to stop this capitalist system in its tracks. If Mooney shut down, if the BART workers shut down in this town, it wouldn't run. And there's a lot of things that we have to do to change the society so we can continue to live on this earth, because let this capitalist production without any control continue. As you see, they're destroying the planet. So it's become a life and death struggle that they could end this. But right now they're baiting China, they're looking at baiting Russia. These are 2 nuclear armed powers. We don't doubt that the United States will use nuclear arms in a confrontation, since they're the only ones who ever use it. So it's pretty shaky right now, and these bankers know that. That's why they're stealing left and right, to try to enjoy the wealth that they've stolen before the shit hits the fan.
My telephone rang one evening, my buddy called for me. Said the bankers all are leaving, you better come round and see. Well, it's a startling revelation. They rock the nation blind. They're all down at the station, no banker left behind. Throw that away a little bit. No banker, no banker, no banker could I find. They were all down at the station, no banker left behind. Well, the bankers called a meeting to the White House. They went one day. They were going to call on the president in a quiet and a sociable way. Well, the afternoon was sunny and the weather was fine. They counted all our money and they left us all behind. No banker, no banker, no banker left behind. They were all down at the station, no banker left behind. Well, I hear the whistle blowing, the conductor happy too. The conductor's calling all aboard, you bankers better leave them soon. Well, you can see the champagne and shrimp cocktails, and that's not all you'll find. There's $1 million bonus, no a banker left behind. No banker, no banker, no banker could I find. They were all down at the White House, no banker left behind. Wells Fargo Bank is greedy, they just can't get enough. They run the regulators, that's why they don't get tough. But the people have the right to rise up and end the Fed. The right to have some public banks and not to be listed. No banker, no banker, no banker could I find. 'Cause we took them to the jailhouse. We said, leave those bankers behind.